What is the best way to surrender in a very difficult situation? Honestly, it's whatever works the best for you, because it's about the surrender. It's not about the path. It's not about the tools. It's not about the methods. It's not about your belief system. It's about surrender. And that's the beauty of surrender, is it's not a method. It's perhaps the only path that's not a method. True surrender, like where you actually depart from yourself, is very difficult to do when things are flowing well for you, or at least you just don't think about that. The deepest choice that you can make out of your free will. It's to essentially say, hello everyone, can you hear me? Good. So a bit of a different setup today. I'm traveling. Caught a bit of a cold, so I'm a little bit under the weather. My voice might be a little bit different. So we'll use this more casual on-the-go setting right now to check in, give you some more time for Q&A than I normally let you have because of my otherwise longer monologues and workshop type teachings. Cool. Well, this one jumps out at me at the moment. What is the best way to surrender in a very difficult situation? I'll answer a few questions and then I'll ask you guys to raise your hand for those who want to have an interaction here. So, what's the best way to surrender in a very difficult situation? Well, to me, that's actually very easy. It's much harder to fully surrender in a non-difficult situation. Haven't you noticed? Like, if it's truly difficult and you're at your wit's end and you have no gas in the tank and nothing is going well and it seems like you're being punished left and right by life and there's no way out and there's no support and all that, then it's like your only option left is to surrender, even if you don't even know how, maybe. But you're just, in a sense, creating so much catalyst for yourself from your higher self's point of view, because maybe you went offline somewhere, or you just really, as a soul, want to learn that particular lesson. In this case, some form of surrender. And it pushes you to the edge where you don't have another choice to just surrender, because all your tools, the tools in your toolbox don't work anymore, and so on. Nothing seems to work for you. So when it's a very difficult situation, in my experience, that's when, as a human, so to speak, it's almost like the easiest. It's the easiest condition to surrender in. Maybe you don't agree with that, so I will still answer your question. I just wanted to first give you the context that for me, usually in those most difficult situations, it's the easiest to surrender. And you could almost say, in those states, it's when surrender is the truest. That's why I believe we create these circumstances for ourselves, is because we want to surrender. But when it's going really well, and when you're manifesting your red Ferrari, and you're manifesting your perfect wife or husband, and you're manifesting your perfect, abundant situation, then how many of us would really go at the end of the day, or at the end of another glorious, epic day where everything is in flow, and we go and lay down in our beds and be like, I don't want any of this. Like, I'm going to surrender everything that's flowing so well for me. It's not in my possession. I don't identify with it. I give it back to source. I give it back to life. I give it back to God. And I surrender myself to that greater beingness, that greater intelligence. It's very tempting not to do that, right? To not remind ourselves, to just keep that flow going and live in the illusion of dreaming, of manifesting, because things are working out anyway. So it's harder, I think, for most people to surrender truly. Now, you can be in a flow state and be surrendered because everything's going so well. So from that point of view, you could say surrender is easy when things are flowing well for you. But true surrender, like where you actually depart from yourself, is very difficult to do when things are flowing well for you, or at least you just don't think about that. Unless you've had a lot of practice in difficult times. And you've been taught by yourself to remind yourself to surrender in time before another disaster hits, before another catalyst arises. You've learned to stay on track with God or with your calling, if you prefer, or your alignment, your higher self, your guidance. If you've trained yourself enough, and usually that training comes in the form of some difficult situations, at least when we're in the incarnate state. When you've trained yourself like that repeatedly during challenging situations, you may have the wisdom that carries then with you throughout the more positive, flowy, fun times where things just flow well for you. Then you have the wisdom from prior experience because you've learned to humble yourself. You've learned to surrender yourself, to not be all about your personal will and your personal desires and your personal ambitions and your personal manifestations. But you've learned to surrender, to be in sort of a symbiotic or energetic circuitry with all of creation, with your higher self, with God, if you will, with source, whatever words you prefer, but something greater than your personal, physical, day-to-day mental awareness, right? That's what surrender is essentially. It is an opening up of the bubble of your sense and concept of self to where your awareness can kind of leak out of this balloon, the air inside of your personal balloon. You know, you can poke a hole in that. Surrender is like poking a hole in that, or even popping that balloon altogether and allowing the air, as they say in a lot of the Indian scriptures, the air inside the pot, when the pot breaks, becomes one with the air outside the pot. And it always already was, in essence. Your personal consciousness, in other words, your individual consciousness, your individual sense of I am, is no different ultimately from God's presence. God, I am, the great I am, as they say in Christianity, Buddha mind, Christ consciousness, the absolute self, or at least the absolute self in terms of that presence of awareness, Satchidananda. There is no real distinction between your nature and the real nature. But when the pot breaks, or when the balloon pops, the bubble pops, then the air remembers, the air that was seemingly contained by the pot just remembers, hey, there is no actual distinction between my air and air in general, or universal air, if you will, or space. The space inside the pot is the space outside the pot. It's just the pot that creates the illusion of a pocket of space, a pocket of you. This is just an analogy, but you get the point. Surrender essentially is to see beyond your pot, to see beyond your bubble. And again, if everything's going so well inside of your little pot or balloon or bubble, then do you really have enough incentive as an egoic consciousness, as someone with ambitions and desires and dreams, and things are flowing well, and they seem to be going in that direction, and you apply more and more of that sort of manifestational power, for instance? How many of you would sincerely stop a few times a day, and while you're flowing and things are happening greatly for you, would you really pause that to give all that back to life, to disown all of these things, to surrender beyond your personal pot? And most people just don't do that. And I can include myself in this equation, at least when I was younger. So for me, it has been difficult situations that usually have, cracked the pot when that pot was maybe reformed for a bit, for whatever purpose or theme or bubble I wanted to explore in that moment. And then the bubble gets popped because I have no other way out. Like, all of life is reminding me, wake up, fucker. Like, this is not about this. This is not about you. This is not about what you think it's about. You're not what you think you are. You're not what you're chasing and manifesting and all that. So surrender is almost always, in my experience, but again, this could be different for some of you, but I think this applies to a lot of human beings. Surrender is almost forced upon us. That's what it seems like. It's preceded by a period of victimhood, a period of feeling despondent, feeling disappointed, feeling abandoned, feeling betrayed, feeling defeated, and so on and so forth. And then the surrender happens, right? Light is, or the dark is darkest before the dawn, that expression. So going through that dark tunnel and it gets darker and darker right before the light hits you. And so surrender is that gateway into light, into freedom again. but it's a different kind of freedom than I want a Porsche and I want a fancy cigar and I want a beautiful life and I want this and I want more money. All right. So to answer the actual question, what is the best way to surrender in a very difficult situation? Honestly, it's whatever works the best for you because it's about the surrender. It's not about the path. It's not about the tools. It's not about the methods. It's not about your belief system. It's about surrender. And that's the beauty of surrender is it's not a method. It's perhaps the only path that's not a method. So I could teach you a tool, I could teach you a visualization, and these things might help, but at the end of the day, and this is why it's so pure, such a pure teaching by life itself, purer than anything I could ever put into words or courses. Because surrender cannot be faked, surrender cannot be done. Surrender is the deepest choice that you can make out of your free will. It's to essentially say, out of free will, I surrender. I let go. I give up in a sense, not in a pessimistic way, but I give up whatever I've been trying to get at, whatever I've been trying to chase or manifest. And I let God live through me. I let life live through me. And there's no real method to this. It's just a forced surrender. It's just, I mean, at the end of the day, it's not forced. You can fight it to the very end. And some people do, and some people die that way or kill themselves that way or whatever it might be, or drown themselves in whatever drugs or alcohol. But those who do end up surrendering, it feels like a forced surrender, but it is still the most beautiful free will choice you can ever make. And it is the most liberating too, because it takes away all the stress. It takes away all the endeavors that you were so invested in. A simple way to think about this is all that you really need to give up is your need for a particular outcome. So right now, if you notice your energy field, if you will, your energy system, your biofield, just take a deep breath and relax, a deep sigh. Become fully present. Take another deep breath. And relax. Take another deep breath. Become more present. Now, place your awareness, your attention on your body, and if you can, on your subtle body, which you can picture as sort of an aura around you, like an egg-shaped, somewhere in between a humanoid shape and an egg-shaped field around you, a biofield, an electromagnetic field of energy patterns and vibrations and scintillations and little sort of solar flares and maybe some tenser, more resistance-based areas. But just get a feeling of your energy body, essentially. And if that's too weird or complex for you, just being aware of the feelings, the tension versus the relaxation in your physical body. So being aware of this locational vehicle of yourself over here, I mean, in your case, over there. Any level of stress that you have at this moment, and stress can be subtle. It's not always what you have learned to define as stress. So you got to become subtle with this. You got to become sensitive to this. But notice there is some kind of background stress present for you, most likely right now. And part of knowing yourself is knowing that about yourself, being aware of that. Not judging it, just observing it. Now, notice any kind of tension in your body, whether it's a particular location or whether it feels like it's just overall or systemic or in the background, doesn't matter. But observe the way that it is for you. Notice that tension, whether background or in a specific location or both. And maybe it's a tension you didn't even notice before this moment, and you wouldn't have called yourself tense. But you can, upon closer investigation, upon applying this greater sensitivity of your awareness to your system, you can acknowledge that actually I am kind of stressed in the background. There is a bit of tension running there. I don't know what it's about, maybe, but I notice I'm not completely in bliss. I'm not completely at ease. I'm not completely one with the space outside my pot. I'm kind of hoarding the space inside of this vehicle, and I'm a little bit tense about certain things, and I feel like I'm moving towards something, like I'm needing to get somewhere, I'm needing to understand something, or apply something, or get to a certain state of achievement. When you catch on to that energy, and it might just be a sensation, it may not come with a clear story, and it doesn't need to. It's more important to be aware of the energy of it, the energy of tension. Just being aware of it already relaxes it and begins to reveal its deeper cause in the causal body, if you remember. So, in general, to keep this simple, if you have that type of a stress or tension that you notice in your system, in your body, in your energy field, in your consciousness, in your mind, then just start by assuming that there is some idea that you have, some concept that you've learned, that you've bought into, that you've believed in, which suggests that in some way, shape, or form, something right now is missing, and that it is acquirable, that it is attainable through this or that method, understanding, path, sequence of actions, so on and so forth, over a period of space-time. So there is some belief that right now, as you are, something is missing, something is lacking, something is off or wrong, and that you need to do A, B, C, D, E, and think A, B, C, D, E, and act A, B, C, D, E, and so on, in order to fulfill that which is lacking or missing. When you enter into a very difficult situation, as the questioner put it, all that really means is that the outer circumstances seem to heavily contradict that promised land that is a projection of your lack idea, your lack belief. Okay, so step one is you've bought into an idea that something is lacking. There's no evidence for this, but you believe it. The energy body takes this on, it forms it into sort of a crystallized nodal point. It's like a concept that becomes electromagnetically charged, if you will. You can feel this as a resistance or as a tension or as some kind of a stress or anxiety in the background. Or again, you can also locate it somewhere in your body in a particular center, for instance. And that's step one of this stressful state, which then ultimately leads to the question of surrender. And because you believe that's lacking, again, you have created a projection, a series of hopes and dreams and desires, which suggests that if your situation will look like this and that instead of such and such, then that will then mean that you can then believe, let go of the belief, essentially, that something is missing or wrong with you or lacking. So you've invested a lot of your energetic power into the idea something is lacking, which leads to projections and dreams and hopes and future and time and space and wants and needs and stress. And now when the situation around you doesn't just seem to not quite match what you want, or doesn't seem to quite be on track with where you think you should be headed, but it seems to oppose it. It seems to contradict it left, right, up, down, center, in, out, before, behind. Everywhere you look, your situation seems to be countering the hopes and projections that you've created from, first of all, buying into this concept that something is missing, lacking, and so on. So when you say a very difficult situation, one thing I've learned from my own life path is that there is no such thing as a very difficult situation. There is no such thing, not objectively. Yes, you can create that experience of a very difficult situation, but what is that? What does that mean? What does it mean, a very difficult situation? It's a complete subjective marker, something that you've attributed that meaning to, which surrender will show you this. And therefore, it will free you from more and more. It will free you from your victimhood tendencies. Because we believe we're unwell, we believe we're lacking something, then we cherish within this personal little pot or bubble of space that we believe is separate from all that is. We create an image, a dream inside of this bubble. And then we gear all our energies towards that manifestation, towards that different circumstance or different state. So we invest ourselves in this bubble, hence all the tension, all the charged energy. And now the situation that we see, we judge as being very counter, being very oppositional, being very against those dreams and hopes that we're so invested in, because if they don't happen, we don't feel, we don't allow ourselves to believe, to see the perfection that is here always and already. So this is the state that we call non-surrender. This is the state that we call personal striving from a place of lack. And that's also, again, why a lot of the manifestational teachings and why it's so popular is because everyone suffers from this. And manifestational tools sometimes can have very little to do with purity of mind, body, and spirit. They can have very little to do with what the spiritual journey is actually about. And it's touted as, it's prided itself as being this whole spiritual thing, but it's just a mechanic of life. It's like, how do you build a house? Well, you do it like this. How do you manifest something in your reality? Well, you could do it like this. Doesn't mean it's like of a spiritual value per se. But it is appealing to people because it promises that our hopes will come true if we only sort of do this or this differently, or we understand the universe more and how we're all connected. And so now we're trying to sort of apply genuine universal concepts and laws to fit our personal little bubble of, I'm not good enough, I don't have what I want, what I need, and I'm going to get it through these means and using spiritual concepts and so on and so forth. But again, what happens then when you're in a perceived very difficult situation in your life, where nothing seems to support you, everything seems to oppose you? It's purely guidance. It's forcing you to get to the very edge of your bubble and to pop that bubble, to surrender, because you have no other choice, it seems. So the difficult situation doesn't really exist. It's completely self-made up, self-attributed, but your higher mind knows what you will perceive as a difficult situation because it knows what you're hoping for. And it also knows what seems to you to be the opposite of what you're hoping for. So it can put these things in your path to give you a pause, to give you a stop, to give you a little smack in the face, to make you pause. Because why are we here? We are here for spiritual reasons. At the end of the day, we're here for spiritual growth and learning. That is the purpose of manifestation. It's not the Ferrari. You can have it, but that's not why you're here. So it uses your attachment, you yourself. This is not some other entity. This is you yourself at a higher level, a wiser level. Use your own weakness against yourself to strengthen yourself. And the true way to strengthen yourself is surrender. It is faith. It is trust. It's opening up beyond your bubble. Doesn't mean you're not wildly powerful. Doesn't mean you can't change the weather. Doesn't mean that you can't manifest what you need and want. Doesn't mean you can't perform miracles. You can. However, it's not why you're here. So it's not going to be prioritized necessarily by your own journey, by your own manifestational outcomes, because manifestation largely is governed, overseen, overviewed by a wiser, higher level of your own consciousness. Sometimes we call it the sub or unconscious, but it's actually a higher conscious level of your very own, call it soul or entityness or beingness, if you wish. So you got to learn how to work with yourself and not oppose it with your personal will. Like, no, I really need that Ferrari. Otherwise, I can't pick up the chicks and I can't have this and I can't drive fast and I can't feel free in this life and so on and so forth. You got to first work with the lessons that you want to learn. And this is where surrender comes into play. So you create situations for yourself that you know at a higher level that your biased mind will project, will define, will describe to itself as this is a very oppositional, antagonistic, difficult, non-supportive situation. Hence, it's difficult. I'm suffering. I'm struggling. But why are we struggling? Would you still be struggling in that difficult situation if you had no need for any particular outcome? Really think about this. Let this settle in for half a minute. Would you take a difficult situation from your recent past, perhaps, if you have one? Maybe you perceive that you're in one currently. And ask yourself, why is this difficult? I understand that it feels difficult. I'm saying it's not objectively difficult. Having no money in your bank account is not objectively difficult. Not having your perfect partner in life is not objectively difficult. But it feels difficult. There is this resistance, antagonistic, universe against myself, God against me against me. Why is this not happening? Type of energy, this lack projection, which isn't ideal for manifestational results, by the way, but more on that later, probably in 2 weeks. But there is this antagonistic energy, which feels like the worst, right? That's why we define it as a difficult situation, because we feel so disconnected from ourselves. We don't feel loved by ourselves. We don't feel supported by the universe. And we're trying to sort of affirmation and mantra our way out of this. No, I am supported. I am supported by the universe. And this can work, but often you come from too much of an antagonistic belief system or state in that moment, too much of a needy place. Having already bought into how lacking and needy you are and how you're betrayed, that even those powerful statements, like I am whole, I am supported, everything is going so well for me, that even these statements energetically backfire. And they can make it seemingly even worse because all you're doing is you're putting more evidence into the mix that it's not true, that it's not working, that it's not going the way you want it to go. So take a situation like that, which, if you have a human body, you have at least one of those scenarios in your life, I'm sure, if not on an almost daily basis sometimes. So take a difficult situation. And remember, there's nothing objective in the situation that says to you, there's no authority in that situation that says to you, hey, I am a difficult situation. You are in it right now. You are making that up. There's no proof of that. Just remember that. It's always good to remember that everything is as you say it is 24/7, which is a very powerful manifestational understanding, which again, more on that later. But objectively, it is not difficult. But why does it feel difficult? And would it still, here's the question, would it still feel difficult if you had no desire? If you did not need the conditions of your life, the appearances of your life, the colors, the shapes, the pixels, the forms, the duration of it, the weight of it, the volume of it, the shape of it, if you didn't need it to look any particular way, if you were completely free of a particular outcome in mind, what would happen to that difficult situation? It would instantly disappear. Like you'd be unable to find it. If suddenly, and this is possible, and this is surrender, you give up So even though surrender cannot be taught, this is perhaps one of the more tangible ways to sort of segue your way into it. What exactly is surrender? What do you surrender, practically speaking? It's outcome. It's the need, the desire for a particular condition or outcome. This takes courage. But when you do it. When you reason in that way with yourself, when you start to make sense to yourself from that place of surrender, of opening up, of letting go, the difficult situation virtually instantaneously disappears from your view. Even if nothing is actually different, the pixels are still the same. You have the same desk, you have the same relationship, you have the same bank account information, you have the same shitty old Nissan or whatever, which is more than most people can say for in this planet anyway. So, but you get the point. It doesn't yet reflect what you want, right? But if you let go of the wants, then what about the situation is difficult? And so what opens up in you when you do that is God's eye instead of your personal eye. You start seeing universally. You start seeing with perfection. The victim state disappears. Your complaining disappears. You're feeling sorry for yourself, feeling abandoned disappears. And what streams back into your energy field is a sense of fulfillment, a sense of guidance, a sense of love, a sense of interconnectedness, a sense of support against all odds. So next time that it seems very complicated when you're in a difficult situation and you want to surrender, you want to feel connected again, which is basically what the desire for surrender is. So I don't want to be at war with myself, with creation, with existence, with God. I want to feel loved. I want to be loved. I want to be connected. Then remind yourself that A, it's not inherently a difficult situation. It is whatever you say it is. And B, you're saying that it is difficult only because you have an attachment to a particular outcome. The moment you're willing to, even if you only imagine it, just imagine what would it be like if I just stopped wanting this thing. And you can see that it's directly proportional. How much you want a certain outcome is directly proportional to how difficult your situation appears to be. And from a state of surrender, if to touch in on this concept of manifestation a little bit here, one of the core principles is that whatever you are, you will perceive. Whatever energy you radiate, if you will perceive or attract or materialize. So if you go from the energy of, I'm attached to this outcome because I'm lacking something, to faith in God that you're not lacking anything, you just are brainwashed to think that way. And you dare, again, takes courage, but you dare to let go of your lack belief, or either way works, it goes both ways, or you dare to let go of your desire for that outcome, your need for that outcome. What if you just give it up? Now all this stress and this charged energy, these sort of charged resistant nodal points in your energy field, they clear out. Instantly, God's presence comes back into your beingness. There's a deeper remembrance of your soul, fullness, your essence, your freedom. There's a greater sense of perfection that shines back forth into your perspective, your feeling state, your body, your mind. You feel lighter, you feel healthier. Now, what are you radiating, so to speak? Very different energy. So that's usually why we see this in our evidence in our lives when we say, it shows up the moment I let it go. When I stopped wanting it, it was right there, which seems like one of the most annoying principles of the universe. And I would almost agree. In some areas, I still do agree. Because what is the point? From a human perspective, what's the point in getting what I want when I no longer fucking want it? Right? So, what is the point? Like, it seems nonsensical. It seems like this cruel universal joke. Like the more energy you put into it, the harder you try, the less of it you'll get. And the more you don't give a shit about it, it'll just be there. You won't want it anymore, but hey, it's right there. Have fun. So the reason why that works that way is because your energy changes when you let go of the outcome needing to be a certain way. Your energy changes. You literally connect back to the motherboard, to source, instead of this personal bubble with its ideas based in lack. So at the end of the day, it's a really benevolent system of self-reflection, but it can be very annoying and it can require a lot of courage to let it go. And most people, I wouldn't say most people, but a lot of people, a lot of the time, do not let it go unless they're forced to let it go. Hence the very difficult situation materialization. And what I've learned often the hard way is that if you can catch yourself early on, you can stay in a flow state that's not purely personally motivated, but that's actually connected from a deeper point of view of your own self as a holistic being, also beyond this life. And you can then maintain a much greater flow state where things do just sort of show up and flow for you. But you are in surrender to what you want to learn and truly express and truly manifest here. You're not just willing yourself into it. And if you can do this prematurely, if you can catch yourself prematurely when you start trying too hard, when you start wanting to badly, when you come from lack, when you have this specific picture and it needs to be like that, otherwise I can't feel good, I cannot feel loved, then if you catch that early on and you learn to surrender before it gets really, really tense, you pick up on the subtle cues from your higher self, like, hey, take a chill pill, dude, all is well. Oh, okay. Now you don't have to catalyze into being this very oppositional, seemingly difficult situation for yourself. So life gets, in a way, flowier and flowier, easier and easier. Manifestations become more and more natural. Your life, in a sense, becomes more and more magical. You may not always perceive it this way, but if you were to compare it with your former state from 5 years ago, or to the average human being in the way that they live and materialize, you would see like, hey, I'm actually in flow state a lot of the time. I'm actually allowing things to manifest a lot of the time. I might not appreciate it. I might still be a bit stubborn in my insistence and what I want to notice it, but more and more of the time, I'm actually at least somewhat surrendered enough for sort of the lid of the pot to be open. I'm still my pot, maybe, but at least there's an airflow between the air inside and the air outside my pot, my bubble. So there's a naturalness to it. And sometimes it tenses up a bit. The lid goes on. I can feel that tension. I can feel that pressure, but I'm going to catch myself. I'm not just going to build pressure until I combust into a very difficult negative situation. I'm going to take the lid off. I'm going to take the chill pill, the universal chill pill that I want this chill pill. And so pretend you have a pill that's called, I don't need this and I don't want this. And when you feel like you need and want something too much, and the lid goes on and the pressure builds and life starts to throw difficult situations your way, and you don't feel supported and you feel stressed and you start getting sick and so on, take the I don't want anything and I don't need anything chill pill. And you go, okay. And you notice you get better and better at this. You start cooperating with the universe. You start cooperating with God. You start appreciating the guidance by letting go of needing that Ferrari or needing that partner or needing that house or needing that money and giving it back to God, surrendering it, opening up that airflow, if not breaking your pot altogether, which would be equal to sort of an enlightened state of being, I suppose, in this analogy. Then the whole angle of materialization, manifestation is very different. It becomes much more holistic and supportive overall. Like you're actually going to go in the direction that you want to go in from a soul level, not just, hey, I'm getting what I want, I'm making all the money. And again, you can make money also from an aligned state. So I'm not saying making money is always coming from personal will, because there is no, this is what it has to look like. Someone aligned can become a billionaire, it doesn't matter. And someone misaligned, can stay poor forever. So there's no direct equation that way. It's all what makes sense for your journey. But when you're coming from connection with God, when your space, your internal space is blended with the external space, so to speak, you are not just materializing what you think you want, usually based in insecurity and lack, that you're not good enough as you are, that it's not perfect as it is. But you're also actually fulfilling your destiny. So that, let's say that you die one day, which is likely, um, that you don't sort of go into your life review, if you will, and you're like, oh, I had everything that I thought I wanted. I fulfilled 100% of my potential as a human manifester. I became rich. I drove my red Ferrari. I had this, I had that. I could travel all the time. And da, 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 da. If I wanted something, it would just happen like that. But then you discover I've only fulfilled 0.5% of why I actually chose to incarnate. Now, who is richer? The person who is 90% there to fulfill this potential as to why they actually came to Earth and perhaps doesn't have a single dime in their bank account, versus the person who has $1 billion, which is like nothing anymore these days, as I see. But let's say you have $100 billion in your bank account, then, and you realize, actually, I've only fulfilled 0.5% of why I actually came here, then who is richer? Who is actually living materialization, you could say, better or in a more holistic fashion? So we have to get our priorities straight, because I don't want to just empower you to go out there and manifest from personal will, which is filled with distortions. It doesn't do anyone any good, including yourself, your soul. I wanted to honor why you came here, so that when you die, and you die, and you die, and you die, and you all die, and I'm dead, that it's not like, hey, we were taught these awesome things by this spiritual being, teacher, Massaro, whatever. And we were able to materialize all this and like assert our personal will into a creation. But actually, we didn't quite fulfill our mission. Like, actually, not at all. We got sidetracked. We got egoically sidetracked. And we didn't do that much good to the planet. In fact, we used and abused and consumed a lot of it, never really waking up to God's spirit, to true purpose, to true richness. So I'm all for manifestational understanding. Like, do you understand how creation works? How does it respond to you? How does it reflect you? But I don't want to give you the tools to further move away from your true purpose, because my allegiance really is to your soul. It's not to your person. That's why I can sometimes get a little fierce with you and give you a smack, a little spiritual spanking, because I believe at the end of the day, you will thank yourself for doing so. Some things are just much more important than other things. And so we need to, first of all, know, what is it like to be rich? What does it mean to be truly rich? To be truly supported, to be a manifestational superhero? It doesn't mean to have a lot of money in your bank account per se. By all means, go create that and support the mission, your mission, whatever it might be, with that. Why not? Like, create epic stuff out there. But make sure it's in alignment with why you're here. Make sure it's serving others, which is a big portion of why you're all here. Is to see this as a wholeness, not as a personal little pot. Let's accumulate whatever I can. Because, my friends, when you die, you won't bring anything with you except what percentage of your destiny has been fulfilled. And that includes what you've learned. What you take with you, in other words, is what you've learned, what you've truly integrated in this life, the lessons, the balances. And surrender is such a big part of this. You can't learn what you're here to learn if you don't have a strong, surrendered heart, a courageous, surrendered heart. But if you do, you're the richest people on earth.
Massaro University is a vibrant online community dedicated to accelerating your awakening and activating your purpose for the benefit of all. Join live sessions with Bentinho and workshops led by experienced facilitators. Deepen your wisdom, empowerment, and self-knowledge, and experience life-changing shifts week after week. At Massaro University, finding like-hearted seekers is easy and inevitable. Lifelong friendships and a shared purpose fuel profound personal and collective growth. Create your free account today at massaro.university and step into a community that's designed to elevate every aspect of your life.
Reza?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking my question. So I have a question about the 3-day challenge in the context of, one of the old sessions you did on the causal body and what you were sort of referencing today about letting go and non-attachment. And what I'm struggling to understand is sort of the concept of the day two challenge. How do you discern if it's either what you're experiencing as a day two challenge is either a reflection of some kind of unconscious lack belief or projection of like I need or concept or limiting definition, like you're talking about today, or an echo of old beliefs before you set your new intention that are sort of like you'd use a guitar analogy in one of your videos about how, there's going to be an echo from your past vibration that's sort of catching up to you. Or if what you're experiencing as obstacles as your day two challenge is sort of like a redirection from your higher self, or it's completely impossible. What I'm struggling to understand is like, how do you discern which of the four things the limitations you're seeing in your reality are? Because it seems to me that someone could sort of intend and sort of like um, try to navigate a day two challenge for years. And unless you're sort of privy to whether it's a redirection or just a continuous deepening into deeper unconscious projections you need to let go of, you could be stuck there like for lifetimes. So that's what I'm kind of confused on.
Cool. Well, rich question. Thank you. So your essential question is how do I distinguish between what's a day two challenge that's inviting me to not believe the obstacle and what is a redirect and therefore the obstacle is actually valid and it's nudging me in a different direction? Is there a third element to this that you would like to distinguish?
Yeah. The third element being something like it's completely impossible. But I don't even know if it's possible for it to be completely impossible, given what you say about there's no such thing as lack, there's infinite reality. So that would be the third sort of potential avenue.
Great. Well, first of all, I can scrap that one and say, at least in my understanding, everything is possible, literally, not figuratively. However, and this is why the manifestational understanding needs some balancing with what is actually important in life, because it may not be relevant for you. It may not be in your highest interest to manifest A or B or C or D. And we usually lack the wisdom to determine this. However, if your desire is not born out of a rebellion against what is, if it comes from a connection, a listening to why you are here, so if your desires for something seemingly impossible, let's say, like Moses had to split the Red Sea, quite an impossible feat, but apparently it happened because it was relevant. Had he just stood there in his, manifested his red Ferrari and his perfect wife and his house, and he had no real purpose to split the sea, I doubt it would have happened when he had that thought. Bit of a dramatic example, but you get the idea because you're talking about things that are seemingly impossible. Um, there have been enough miraculous things in my life, manifestations and so on, for me to know that I have enough evidence to back up my intuitive belief that indeed everything is possible. But these kinds of things don't happen out of idle curiosity, temptation, coming from a lack belief and wanting that so that you can then feel good about yourself or prove yourself or go to the next level. So if it's coming from a place that's not in connection with your true self, your true reality, then it will likely not happen. Doesn't mean it's not possible. It just means it's not relevant for you because it would misguide you. So it depends where your fascination comes from with that something impossible that you're referring to. What is its drive? If it's truly relevant, if it's truly aligned, then it will be more probable that it occurs when it needs to occur. But if it's just out of an egoic thought, you're not going to have the energy backing it up that is required to sort of perform these miracles or impossible things. But mechanically speaking, nothing is impossible because nothing is real. Something can only be impossible if something else is real, and it cannot become that thing, but nothing is real. It would be like asking the question when you're dreaming at night, is anything impossible in a dream? I would have to say no. And there's no difference here. But you're not going to dream everything. It depends on what's relevant and what you're focused on and so on. So does that take care of the third element?
Totally.
Sweet. So then how do you know, and this one is a very common question that people have, but you asked it very eloquently. How do I distinguish between, so for everyone here on the call who may not be aware of the 3-day challenge, what Reza is talking about is when you have a desire, when you have an intention or a vision for yourself, and you activate it by believing in it, by going in that direction, by wanting to materialize it, by investing in that, believing in it, then usually it's been my observation that there will be, so that's day one. Day one is that renewed vision, it's that desire, that intention for yourself. Then usually day two will come around the corner quite immediately. This is the test of the universe to see, do you truly want this change that you say you desire? Do you truly want to shift your reality in this way towards the thing you desire? Because it implies a few things. It implies you can no longer be a pussy, for instance. You can no longer be a victim in the ways that you were. You can no longer be comfortable in the ways that you were. If you want to be an artist that sells their paintings all across the world, you cannot also be the person that sits in their room being comfortable all day, right? So there is sort of a natural request or echo in response to your demand to the universe. I want this. The universe says, are you sure? And that are you sure usually comes in the form of your mother or your father or your sister or your brother or your partner or your bank account or something else, something weird, unpredictable that seems to counterindicate what you desire, that seems to oppose what you have just begun to believe in, this new intention. And that's the day two challenge or experience. Now, if your initial intention is in alignment with what you are, then that means that challenge or opposition is actually a challenge. It's actually a question. Do you want to take the safety off of this gun of your manifestation and shoot yourself into this new reality, knowing what it implies? It implies you can no longer be this being that's afraid of what their mom or their dad or their brother or their sister thinks of them. You cannot be what you say you want to be, and at the same time have these fears and beliefs. So again, that's the purpose. The purpose of the day two challenge is not to oppose you. It's to extract the true desire from you and to leave behind. It's like the eye of the needle. Day two is the eye of the needle. And you cannot pass through that eye of the needle with all the baggage that you're comfortable with, familiar with. So yes, you might say, I want that reality, but reality B is not reality A. So you got to shift. And any shift means you got to depart from yourself. You got to surrender yourself. You got to give up yourself to get there. To become this, you need to unbecome that. Day two is asking you, are you ready? Are you sure? It's kind gesture, because otherwise you're like shooting all these desires, you're becoming all these things that you're not ready for. So day two is a reality check. Are you ready? But if the day one intention that you had, the vision, is in alignment, it's not just a vain, egoic desire out of a lack belief to compensate for something, but it's actually out of alignment. It's actually what excites you. You actually want to become an artist, for instance, in Amar's case. Then you should treat this day two challenge as just that, a request. Are you ready? Are you ready to let go of everything that comes up in you in response to this day two challenge? Because the day two challenge is exactly engineered to make you doubt your day one intention. Because in day one, you say, I feel like I am this, but I feel like what I truly am and want to become and embody is this. So I want to go from me A to me B. That's what we claim. That's what we declare. That's what we intend. That's what we activate, initialize. And then ourselves will orchestrate some kind of a challenge, a filter, an eye of the needle that will perfectly accommodate version B. And it will perfectly bring up all the doubts and fears of person A. And if you stay true to person B and you have faith, you take that leap of faith and you truly believe it, you truly believe that you can be version B and you're ready to let go of version A, then you will go through the eye of the needle. You will pass the day 2 challenge and you will enter into day 3, which are called the day of confirmation, celebration, and transformation. So almost every desire for change goes through these little stages. They can be in a matter of seconds. If you have immediate faith and it's a quantum leap, it's done immediately. You go from day 1 to day 3 instantaneously. But it can be years too, with some desires, like wanting to become the full expression of your calling, or again, like wanting to be the artist. You can contradict that with yourself for years and cause all kinds of complicated belief systems around that. So the day 2 challenge can be very long or it can be almost non-existent. It depends on how much faith and shiftability, how malleable, how flexible are you in your sense of self to go from version A to version B with completely different belief system, or somewhat different belief system at least. But then your question is beautiful, which is, okay, well, how do I know if it's an oppositional challenge to ask me to let go of certain beliefs and continue to have faith in my intention? And when is it a pointer on the road? It's like, hey, pause for a second. Maybe you don't actually want this direction, and your higher guidance is letting you know it's better if you go 12 degrees left instead of straight through where you think you should be headed. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And in essence, it doesn't matter which one it is. You don't really need to know which one it is. All you really need to do to move past that, either challenge or to use the diversion or the alteration of your course, the course correction. Either way, you'll pass through both of these, whichever one they might be. If you stay true to what is my deepest intent, what is my true desire, and make sure that's coming from a pure place, doesn't mean it cannot have a selfish aspect to it of joy or expression and so on, right? But the essence of it is coming from a quiet place. It's coming from a place of self-knowledge. If you connect to that, you have faith in that, and you throw all your old beliefs in the furnace of that new intention, then either way, you will gain the wisdom and insight to take that rerouting. You will just see how much sense it makes. You will not fight with it, because going through the day 2 challenge is not done by fighting it. It's the same energy that you would take by saying, oh, hey, look at this roadblock. I guess I should go left. That type of energy where you receive day 2 challenge as guidance is the same energy you want to get you through an actual day 2 challenge. It's that of humility. It's that of self-confidence. Same thing. Humility is confidence. Insecurity is arrogance. So to be humble, oh, higher self wants me to go left instead of straight through. I thought it was that, but maybe it's a little different. Or maybe I need to get there through a different route because there's a trap right behind this thing that I think I want. Great. I'm so confident in myself that I'm humble and open to take that guidance. And then when you have that willingness, it also means you're already embracing the new version of yourself that's not insistent upon its old beliefs. So the same energy that you need to interpret and feel and sense and listen to and accept the little roadblocks, which are reroutes for your best interest, that same energy will carry you through or over a day 2 challenge. So it really doesn't matter which one it is. The same process, the same advice I would give, the same remedy, which is tune in with yourself. Is it a true intention? Do you believe in it? Then yes, you can let go of what it should look like. Just stay true to the energy, the intention, the feeling of it, the beingness of it, the version of you that that reality represents for you. And if you're able to do that, you're able to go left, right, up, down, back, forth. It doesn't matter because you're confident. When you're confident, the day 2 challenge will disappear. If you're insecure about your new state, day 2 challenge will remain. It will keep you safe in your former reality.
Totally. And just to make sure I understand, the way you would know if it's sort of like an intention or desire coming from a true place is if you've really attuned to it and you're sort of like I guess that's something I'm confused on because from what you had said in other sort of I don't know if it was videos or like your Trinfinity stuff with the emotional guidance system. If anything sort of feels dense or heavy or sort of like emotionally charged in a negative way, it's in disconnection with your higher self's perspective or like the universe or the one or life. But does that also apply to figuring out if your desire comes from a pure place? Like if you tune into it and you're like, let's say, I don't know, an example, I want to be a venture capitalist, right? And it comes from this lack belief of like, in American society, your value is based on how successful you are. If it's coming from a place of like, I feel a tightness in my heart or a pit in my stomach, and it's like, I need this in order to sort of like be successful and like make my family's name look good or whatever, that would be from a lack belief. But if it came from a place of like, you know what, I love creating impactful businesses and portfolios, and it's a joy, and I have all the skills for it, and I want to be of service in the world, not only just for the world, but for myself too, because I love it. And it's like, it has auxiliary benefits that, even though it has somewhat of a selfish and selfless simultaneous desire, that is more likely to be a pure desire, even though it's because we're human, right? Unless you're like relatively enlightened, there would always be a selfish aspect, even if it was mostly selfless. Or is that a misunderstanding?
No, that's fair enough. And good explanation, by the way. You would probably go pretty far as a venture capitalist. Um, the the thing about selfishness being okay is that it is part of our guidance mechanism as creatures. We are individualistic on a material level and a manifest level. And so part of our guidance will translate as it feels good to go over here and it feels bad to go over there. It just wouldn't make sense if things that are bad for us would also feel good. So we are being guided by good feelings, and that is a feedback system that you and you alone, in a sense, will know and will feel about. So it's okay to have some egotism or at least self-awareness, self-centeredness when it comes to acting on your passion, following your joy, listening to your guidance. And you are correct that the more enlightened you are, to use a heavy term, but you get the idea, the less your life becomes about any of that. This is true. But if you accept where you're at with this, and you want to have a more expansive life, and you want to create a more epic experience, and you want to be of service through that as well, then that is a good way to distinguish. Just like you were giving these beautiful examples, one is it's coming from a compensatory place. If you can find this in yourself, you can clean that up. You can clean up that desire, and it can leave you be. And the next time a desire that you thought you really had disappears, please, my friends, let it go. Don't hold on to it because you've desired it for 10 years. When it's finally leaving you, say your graces, be grateful because it liberates you. And then there's desires that you still have that are guiding you. But the more clear you are, the more awake you are, the less of a personal pot you have encapsulating pure space as if it's an individual, the more you will simply know, as I call it, you're detecting benefit. The mirror detects benefit. It's no longer like, oh my God, I want this. How are we going to create this? I believe in it. Da da da. That is still coming more from the personal self. There's nothing wrong with that. But the more you become all that is, the more you do just detect where is the benefit. And then it still feels good. There is still some feedback mechanism, but you don't really need that anymore. It's not so much about if you feel good or not. There's a sort of transcendence with that. But as long as you are sort of in your body, living your life in that sense, from an individualistic point of view, and I would say that most of you guys are, which is fine, then there is no shortcut recipe for this, but because sometimes something that is off will feel good to someone if they've reframed that in their mind according to their avoidance pattern, right? Let's say you and I start dating. Now, don't get any ideas, but let's say we would. Then, if I have an avoidance pattern and things are getting a little bit too intimate between us, a little too fast, a little, I feel too vulnerable in our conversations, and you see right through me, it's going to feel really, really good to me to not respond to you for a couple of weeks. Is that actually in alignment? Is that actually the highest? Probably not. But someone in that state can completely convince themselves that they're acting under resonance. They might even text you that this no longer resonates. It's a complete lie. It doesn't have any truth to it, but they really do believe that in that moment. And this is why this question is a relevant thing for so many people. How do you distinguish between your own sort of judgments of what feels good and what you've compartmentalized and comfort translated as, oh, I'm so blissful, I don't need anything or anyone, like I'm totally good, versus genuine alignment and the feel good state that comes from that. One way you could distinguish it is genuine genuine power and availability. If you're in true alignment and you're choosing something that's really inspiring you and it's really part of your next level, authentically, also connected to your soul, and you're not avoiding that, it feels like it feels like you become much more present. You're available, you're happy. You could be ecstatic if it's new to you, but otherwise it's more like a peaceful fulfillment or joy. And you feel powerful without avoiding anything. You feel open. It feels like anyone could come on your path and have a problem, and you feel absolutely confident you could solve it for them if you needed to. There's this sense of wide open availability. There's not just this, I feel good in my room by myself, and this is my resonance, and I'm going to act on this and this. It feels wide open, powerfully wide open. So if you feel powerfully wide open and available, like you're not avoiding anything, you're not tweaking anything, you're just available. That can be one of the barometers for genuine alignment, genuine desire, and being in alignment with that desire. But the only thing people can really do is be honest to the level that they're honest, that they're able to be honest with themselves at this moment. Another question you could ask yourself is there any fear behind this? Is there any fear that's motivating my apparent non-resonance? I might say this doesn't resonate for me, but is there any fear behind that? And if there is, then usually your judgment of it being non-resonance, and therefore this counter thing being my resonance and my alignment and my empowerment, you can soften all that and just first go to the fear. Embrace the fear, acknowledge that fear. It's part of the creature. It's part of the perspective that the creature has, which is limited. It's conditioned. And you acknowledge that. You just become honest with the fear. You let it dissolve. And then again, that availability and that sense of inner power arises. And it feels like the energy kind of goes up. It's brighter and it's like starts to beam outward. It starts to be available. You know that sensation?
Yeah, so is that what you talk about when you talk about sort of like admitting defeat to your beliefs and just sort of
Mm.
like shining the light of like or like what you said about the causal body, right? If you can just really be with the fear and fully embrace it and like accept it, like, okay, it's true, you sort of go to that higher point of view where the limitation doesn't really apply to your
Correct.
frequency as much.
Absolutely. Because that's when you will stop sabotaging yourself. As long as you have a fear-based belief, you are unable, you are like a little retarded child, no offense, that is trying to determine what is left and right. And it just cannot decide that for itself. And but we're so usually feverishly convinced of our resonance from that fearful little place. But if you can acknowledge your fears, just pause with them and admit defeat, meaning, first of all, like, yes, okay, I am afraid to be ostracized or to be rejected or to be a failure. I know that ultimately I am not, but that is the sensation that I have in this creature, this character. It is the way of thinking that I'm aware of. It's not what I am ultimately. I know that. But if you know that you're not that ultimately, you also don't need to avoid it. You only want to avoid these things. You only want to avoid acknowledging your fears if you believe you are these things. But if you know that ultimately, I am not my fears, I am not my sensations, I am not my conditioning, I am not this little creature, then what prevents you from having an honest, clear look at it and loving it into absolution? So it starts with acknowledgement. I am not this, but because I am not this, I am able to fully acknowledge that I have this. It is in my awareness. It is part of the pattern of this creature, and that's okay. I can accept that because I'm not it. So I don't have to push it away. And so that's the start of self-honesty. And that's when we grow up and we become able to discern what's our true resonance and what isn't. Um, so admitting defeat then would be, okay, so I have this fear within my mind, within my psyche. And what is the belief that makes me afraid of that thing? And you just play with that, you observe that, and then you admit defeat to that. There's other methods to release the idea, but one powerful method is the admitting defeat to it. So what you say is, I am afraid that if I step into my calling here, or if I become a venture capitalist, that people will judge me for it, for instance. Or maybe my community will judge me for it being money-based when I know it's in alignment for me, but it will look like it's a selfish motivation. But I've checked again. It's genuinely excites me. But I'm afraid that if I act on this excitement, on this path, on this calling that calls me forth into expansion, into learning, into greater self-knowledge, into service to others, and benefit to self as a consequence, whatever, who cares? It's good. Why not? But I fear that my community or whatever, my family, will judge me as self-centered, money-centered, whatever it is. I know it's not that way for me, but it will appear that way to others. I have a fear for that social rejection. And let's say that belief somehow is so strong that you shouldn't do anything against the perspective of your family or your community. And sometimes the only way to really dissolve it is to completely admit defeat to it, which would be, I will be judged. This is true. I'm not going to try to tweak that. Like, oh no, it will be okay. Or I'll be able to handle it. Or they won't judge me. Or I'll explain myself clear. It's actually, no, you know what? I'm going to go in that direction. I'm going to be venture capitalist. And I'm going to be judged for it completely. My worst case scenario is going to always be there completely. And I am afraid, and I am weak, and I am vulnerable, and I do believe all these things. And if you completely admit defeat to those, when most people try most of their lives to avoid that, prove it wrong, run away from it, and they start all kinds of things, also in the name of resonance and spirituality, and God even, just to not have to admit that they're defeated. But when you defeat now, if you're playing chess with someone and you say, you know what? Here, have my king. You're free. They're still at the board. So as long as you still play the game of your belief system, as long as you still try to prove it wrong, avoid it, tweak it, maybe not make it happen, visualize against it, all that stuff, you're still playing the same chess game. You're in the chess game, the rules of that chess game, of that level of your psyche, is absolutely determined by that very same belief system you're trying to avoid. So if you just say to that belief system, I see you, and you're absolutely right that I'm a selfish bastard for going in the direction of venture capitalism. It is selfish. I'm going to make a lot of money. That excites me to the bone. I can't wait to spend it on pretty girls and beautiful cars and lavish penthouses. I do have that desire. I don't know if I'll actually do it. We'll see. But I have that desire. You're right. I'm an asshole for becoming a venture capitalist. And then suddenly it goes quiet. It's like, wait a second. He just gave up his king. He resigned from this belief. And then you transcend the rules of the game of that belief system.
And what exactly does that mean? Because is it like because you're no longer, is it because like you're no longer trying to defeat it, which would imply that you're actually holding on to it? Which would, I guess, mean that by the acceptance of it, it doesn't like exist anymore because you're more operating from like witness consciousness. Does it mean that you're not going to start to project those unconscious beliefs in terms of your manifestations externally? Like in the venture capitalist example, right? Let's say you are holding on to that belief, like, and you don't acknowledge it or deal with it, that like people are going to judge me, etc. Wouldn't it show up from that perspective of your parents, your brothers, your mothers, your sisters, whatever, judging you and like sort of attacking you for it? Whereas if you accept it and you neutralize the charge of it, like you're talking about, and you transcend that level, would the materializations you see in your reality be not reflective of like your mother, sister, etc., judging you and attacking you for it? Maybe they're neutral to it. Maybe they're supportive to it because it would imply you moved into a different reality where you're not playing by the rules of those beliefs. Is that how it works?
Correct. I wouldn't say 100% all of the time, because sometimes people are just people. But I would say that in most of the cases, the reflection that you get from your manifest reality, including other people, will contain other versions of them. It will open them up to other things. So you will see different reactions than you were expecting from that fear-based reality. So yes, absolutely. But also if it doesn't happen in that way, in sort of magical, wish fulfilled, wow, they're totally so supportive of me, which yes, does often happen. But if it doesn't happen, it's still for a reason. It's still either a day two challenge, or you actually just effectively don't care anymore. Like you actually genuinely don't care. And it's more powerful reflection for you to notice that they still judge you and you don't care anymore. And then usually it will change after that anyway. But it might be down the line or whatever. But yes, in principle, what you're saying is accurate in my experience.
I have one last question, and I want to keep it short in the interest of, getting the microphone to other people. Um, so I guess the stuff that I'm sort of working on is I work at a startup, and we've sort of been unprofitable for like 5 years. I'm 27 now, and I started working there when I was 22. But it's a psycho spiritual therapy institute, and we're doing stuff with sort of like, dealing with trauma and past life karma and all the stuff that I find really interesting and exciting. But we've been sort of like trying to grow for 5 years, and it just hasn't been working. But what that sort of forced me to do was like sit into all my sort of like limiting definitions of it, what it means to be in a startup that's losing money, like dealing with fears of like security, the future, etc. To the point where at a certain point, it just kind of like released. I'm like, I don't really care about the money. I don't really care about, success or all these sort of things that I was taught like matter at my age. And then slowly since then, we're still not profitable, but an avenue sort of opened where we have as good of a pathway to profitability as we'll actually probably get, which I think is great. But at the same time, it's like what you said, like, it's good because it'll mean like the business sort of like lives on and hopefully they'll do a lot of good for a lot of people. But does it really like make a huge difference in my psyche? Not really, which I'm finding interesting. But I guess that sort of what I'm trying to figure out is like there are these larger forces that have been sort of impacting it. Like the kinds of startups we're working in, I would say 80% of them like don't make it. And there are these larger like collective unconscious belief structures, like, most businesses fail. If you run a business this way, it's not going to work. And what I've been trying to figure out is like, is the way to transcend that just the same thing what we're talking about right now? Is it to sort of honor that belief, even though it might be more tied into the collective unconscious and larger forces like the economy, insurance companies, all these things we have to sort of deal with, and just say, okay, like I can really be with that and honor it. And as long as I completely let go of the charge around it and I don't identify with the one Reza who's experiencing a reality in which these larger forces are kind of like jerking around our business, does something happen where I shift into a reality where those sort of larger socio-economic factors don't really apply to us, or we find some kind of a way around them that maybe no other startup has found before, and it's like going to work out for us. But that's what I'm kind of juggling. That's the reason why I'm asking all these nuanced questions is because that's something we've been working on for 5 years, and finally it's turning a corner. But almost quit a couple times, and it's been a very rocky journey. But I'm curious what you think about these larger things like the economy, the Fed, all these different kinds of things that we can't really control, and how that relates to honoring the frequency of the belief and trying to transcend beliefs that are so ingrained in our collective unconscious that it impacts so seemingly everyone in this reality that we think we're in.
So what's your question?
Can you transcend things like big collective unconscious beliefs like 99% of the kinds of startups we're trying to do fail, or is it untranscendable?
No, it's yeah, same question as is anything impossible. It's totally transcendable. But again, the guidance here is strong. Like what you need to appreciate, I think, is the uniqueness of what you're trying to get at with your company and not compare that to other companies. Um, to really appreciate what is the guidance for your company and how is it shaping you through the eye of the needle of your own challenges and your own belief systems to make sure that what you're creating is not just a distraction in manifest form that you can lose yourself in and like be successful and like do good stuff for the world, but where it's actually a manifestational reflection, symbological expression of your soul and what you want to actually learn in this life. Because it's not about the company, it's not about your success. Ultimately, it's about what every individual who plugs into that, whether as the creators or as the consumers, what they get out of that. What's the frequency makeup of it? And to make it successful from Spirit's point of view, that what that means is that its frequency is completely crystallized according to its most unique blueprint. Not if it makes money or if it compares with other companies or if it goes the same route, because those are distracting things for spiritual seekers. So you can create anything, but what it needs to become from Spirit's point of view, what it's trying to coax you towards, why you are challenged or handicapped sometimes, seemingly. In manifestational form, you're never handicapped in consciousness. But why it seems that way is to not get you to get lost in the manifestational world, to always remember the greater consciousness, the spirit, what's true. And simultaneously, to help you chisel out the most unique, crystallized, precise, distilled, nuanced, unique version of the blueprint of the type of creation that you're excited about. That's hence the challenges and the handicaps temporarily.
Well, thank you so much. This was really helpful.
Thanks so much for your questions, my friend. And also, one suggestion is remember to take moments of absolute silence, even if it's a few seconds a day, a couple of times, where you really completely connect to the space of nothingness, where all the potential exists, where you withdraw from the visible, you withdraw from the analysis, you withdraw from what's going on, and you just take a few nuclear seconds at a time, or maybe a couple of minutes where you sit and just connect to the total release of the world, including your company, including Reza, all that. And that's actually going to serve you quite well in being able to chisel it out while staying connected to your true calling, therefore not attracting as many day two challenges because you don't need it, because you're preemptively aware of the God state beyond it, of source. So this will also greatly help accelerate things because you're staying more aware. You don't need that as much counterweight from the manifestation. You'll still get some challenges, but those are to help you distill things uniquely according to your blueprint and the blueprint of what you're creating with these other people. But at least what you're removing from the equation is the unnecessary, higher self saying, hey, pause, slow down. This is not where your life source exists. Remember yourself. And then come from there and things start flowing again.
Will do. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, my friend.
Thank you for watching this Bentinho live session. Bentinho now hosts these transformative live sessions completely free, offering profound insights and guidance to support your journey. To attend the next live session with Bentinho, simply visit massaro.university and follow the instructions to create your free account.